we have famed British writer, presenter of podcasts, of documentary series, writer of books, which we've reviewed on the Decoding Academia series, co-host of Page 94, the Private Eye podcast, and Strong Message Here with Armando Iannucci, staff writer at The Atlantic. It is Helen Lewis.
Well, yeah, and I brought my usual festive treats, actually, which is I've made you a short quiz about the Gurusphere. Well, actually, it's kind of, maybe this is allowed, it's at the intersection of the Gurusphere and the Manosphere, because I do think that in the last 18 months, the two of them have kind of merged into one, right? I mean, I spent a lot of time in the American election last year covering Trump's podcast tour when he did Lex Friedman, Joe Rogan, one of the Paul brothers. I now, in my mind, I can't separate them because I don't care enough. Logan? Come on, Chris.
Logan, yeah, impulsive.
It was impulsive. Yeah. And then, yeah, with the, which they stopped halfway through and had product placement for his energy drink, which is just made me laugh a lot. And Theo Von, yeah. So there is unfortunately a kind of Trump infusion to the quiz this year.
Well, that's good, because Matt was wringing his hands earlier when I was mentioning the quiz, and he was like, "Should I study for it? Do I?" And I was like, "Matt, come on. We all know what will happen. It doesn't matter."
By the way, my favorite bit when you guys did the book club of my book was the bit when you were like, and then some philosophers reviewed it, and Matt just audibly kind of went, "Oh."
Yeah. Actually, we just had, when we do the book reviews, we do like an audience participation second book review. So we just did that for your book like a couple of days ago. But people had read the book months ago.
It's a book club. So we just facilitate the book club. So we've heard the opinions of a broad selection.
Yeah, it's been interesting because it got very mixed reviews, which was really kind of interesting. I think lots of people didn't like the tone of it. I think you put your finger on it, which is there is a kind of stan culture. And it's not just around Nicki Minaj or Taylor Swift. It's around like Picasso. And there was a sort of, and some of the tone in some of the reviews was like, I don't like having pointed out my fave is problematic. And I think the tone of it was very much like, you can still like the art of Picasso. That's fine. Like, I'm not judging you, but people really do feel like you're taking something away from them. So I think that that's where I felt like some of the hostility to it really came. Plus, as you say, lots of people saying, why won't she define what a genius is? And you're like, I'm going to introduce you to this concept called this is a social construct. Like, I thought we were, what is money? Why won't she define money? What, is this piece of paper worth anything or not? And you're like, but yes, that's the kind of the question.
It shouldn't be controversial that people like Picasso or Andy Warhol or whoever are, we're actively cultivating and self-mythologizing. That's kind of part of their brand. I don't think every person who, society is post hoc decided was a bit of a genius necessarily does that. But some of them absolutely, definitely do.
There's one person, Helen, that he has particularly, Matt is very fond of.
I've still probably still got my art book here.
Ian Fairweather, the artist. I don't know who he is.
He's a not very well-known Australian abstract expressionist. He's a minor genius.
He lived on an island, Helen.
He lived on an island.
He drove around on a boat and he did various things. And Matt's convinced he is the real deal. Okay, well, don't you dare.
I thought the end of this was going to be, and he had like a load of 13-year-old girls on the island. No, that's
maybe.
Not what this is going.
He was just a weird old guy that didn't want to talk to anyone and wanted to be all by himself and painted a lot of paintings. And I'm just saying, not Chris has a tendency.
Honestly, I respect that. No, I think everybody's got a problematic fave. There's a vorticist painter and writer in the sort of 1920s-ish called Wyndham Lewis, no relation. And he was just an absolute arsehole. His wife came home from the hospital from giving birth to their child, and he wouldn't let her back in the house because he was upstairs having sex with his mistress. Right? Which is a pretty high bar of being a twat. But you know what? The novel's very funny. The painting's extremely important to the development of Western art. Like the other thing that happened to him is that he was once got into a row with someone who hated him so much they hung him upside down on railings by his trouser turn-ups, which is the kind of thing that used to happen to you if you were a gentleman in the 1920s.
It's in the Beano. That sounds like a Beano.
We need to bring that back. There's quite a lot of people I see on Twitter who I think if only someone had hung you upside down from railings by your trouser turn-ups when you were young, this never would have happened.
That's kind of connected to the topic we got sidetracked on the book club, which is this kind of halo effect where people kind of assume or want to believe that someone who is very, very good at creating a particular kind of thing or inventing the Wankel rotary engine or whatever it happens to be is an amazing person in all other respects, and it's got, and I always, I've mentioned a million times, but like the worst guy, like a really bad guy, Louis Ferdinand Céline, right? He wrote Journey to the End of the Night and Death on Credit. And I love those books. They're really amazing. And at the time when I read them, it was before the internet and stuff. I just knew he was a bad guy. Like no one but a really shitty guy would write those books. It just oozed through the things. And there was no way a good guy could write those books. And, later on I found out he was like a raging anti-Semite before it was
before it was fashionable.
before the Nazis made it cool. And
many such cases.
Yeah. And a proto-fascist and everything else. It's like, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. But it's sort of like, why do you have to like the person that did the thing? I don't know.
I think the favorite thing that came up on that was your idea about the jagged edge of AI. I thought that was really interesting.
Chris, take note. Yeah. I have good ideas.
It was extraordinary.
I've got something to say about that. But
it's exactly right. Like we can, I try not to use AI when I'm writing, right? I want to be able to say my writing is 100% human free. What I do use ChatGPT for is like, give me an example of X, right? Like give me an example of a guy who had floppy hair in a 90s TV service, like as a kind of better natural language Google. And it's really great at that. And obviously it hallucinates even now, but that's pretty easily cleaned up by then once it gives you the example going and checking back. And so I don't have a problem with saying this is a really helpful tool, but it's not great at everything. Like that just seems to be just the most obvious thing in the same way that and as you say, Elon Musk, Starlink is now being rolled out all over the place. Undoubtedly an incredible achievement in connectivity, but the tweets are bad. And like we don't have to pretend the tweets aren't bad.
When it comes to Elon Musk, I have a problem with just giving him the credit for everything any of his companies has done. You know what I mean? Like I don't think we give the director of NASA like all the credit for the moon landing. The work gets done by thousands of people often. That aren't the song and dance men at the front. So not diminishing his various skills.
But let's diminish him by the fact that, Bill Gates has probably delivered the epitaph on Elon Musk, right? Which is the richest guy in the world, has killed some of the poorest people in the world. That's really going to be, for me, the way that I will remember him. He just really, did he do anything in Doge apart from go in and destroy US aid to sub-Saharan Africa? Not really. Like the trillions of vaunted savings didn't really get made. What he did basically was just cut foreign aid, which, to be fair, as it turns out, the British have done as well, right? We've redirected our aid budget into dealing with domestic asylum claims. But just... how honestly, but how does he sleep at night? To the extent that it moved George Bush, actually, like this is one of the things we just found out recently, that George Bush, who was obviously one of the instigators of PEPFAR, the anti-AIDS program, has never criticized any subsequent president in public, was moved to ring privately and say, like, this was an amazing bipartisan achievement. Like, what are you doing? And then went back to painting his pictures of terriers in his ranch in Texas, which is like a weird post-presidency thing.
It feels misplaced now, but I'm just going to mention that I don't have any issue with Matt's jagged edge point. I thought it was very good, but there was, as predictable, like a particular listener feedback that took issue with Matt pointing that out, and I fed it back to Matt. But he has embodied that it was me that said it, but I was just the messenger, okay?
What's the feedback then? What's the critique of it?
Oh, it was essentially somebody arguing that Matt was wrong, that AI is good at anything. I think that was the general thing, or that it was one of the other ways. Either it's like it's good at everything, or it's bad at everything. It was one of the two. Like they took issue with the jagged edge thing. Exactly.
That was silly. That was silly.
Yeah, I'm on Team Matt, and actually, I'm still on Team Me about the fact that the criticisms that I make of AI in the book are, I think AI. Like, I can understand, Chris, that when you're doing like the way you've talked to me about it, and about the way it's useful in some of the kind of mechanistic work that you do, like the drawing up tables or coding or whatever it might be. And I think Claude is particularly good at coding, right? But I don't do that in my job. That's the thing that's interesting. So my kind of way of formulating what my critique is that AI would have probably helped Picasso do his tax return. It wouldn't necessarily have helped him paint Guernica. And that's the bit that we haven't got to yet, is I don't think, even if you could churn out simulacra of Van Gogh paintings, people want that. They want the story. They want the idea they're connecting with another human brain. There was a guy called Van Gogh and he had this terrible mental illness, but out of it came this great beauty. They don't want to think that someone like Hal sitting in a data center was just churning out pictures of flowers, because that's just, there might as well be dogs playing poker. There's no meaning to it.
That's kind of two things, right? One thing is the idea that it's art is a communication from one, conscious person to another, rather than just the product in and of itself, and the creative aspect of it. And where you're so right is that the jagged edge is so jagged at two things. One is telling how many R's there are in strawberry, and the second one is telling jokes. Absolutely cannot tell a joke.
Then again, neither can Elon Musk. If you saw him on Joe Rogan try and tell that joke about the two economists eating shit for $100, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. No, I can't tell jokes. I mean, many of us can't tell jokes. But also charisma, right? In that, if you gave any of us a list of Jimmy Carr's set list, right, which is just full of incredibly good, well-written jokes, and asked us to go and perform it, I don't think it would go well. I think it would just become increasingly, as we read out more, like the interaction between the performer, the alchemy between the performer and the audience, again, is part of what telling a joke is. In the same way that, like, dad jokes, I'm sure both of you do dad jokes, and like part of the pleasure of them is that it's your dad and the joke is going to be terrible and everybody's expecting it to be terrible, and sure enough it is terrible and you love it anyway. Like, that's the bit that's the humanness of it that it will never capture back again.
The bit that has me like a little bit concerned about it, and in general I'm very positively disposed to AI because of like how useful it is, just in like, it is very useful for coding stuff, but also in preparing lectures and stuff, I've just found it really, really useful.
It's been instrumental for me in a couple of papers that I've written, like, and published just over the last year, like very technical papers, a lot of mathematics involved. But it didn't just help me with the sort of mechanical aspects of doing some of the algebra and some of the proofs, but actually like all of the conceptual stuff in terms of developing it. It was kind of like the back and forth kind of thing. Like, I flatter myself, I think I was providing most of the creativity, right? But there's no doubt that it helped me along, and in terms of like an ever-ready research assistant to do the things that would have fatigued me no end and made it such a laborious task that I probably would have given up.
That is also a bit about what I was writing about in the book, is this idea of the lone genius who creates something on their own often requires editing out lots of people, particularly the wives who were incredibly clever and incredibly engaged in the work themselves, like a Vera Nabokov. And what ChatGPT is essentially doing is giving you this like a very smart sounding board. And actually, I think that reveals something quite profound about the fact that a lot of thinking is best done in dialogue. Just like you need prompts feeding into you to kind of make you think about something in a different way, just as much as ChatGPT does.
I used it today. What I used it for today, I woke up in the morning and I've got, sorry, this is a stupid old person anecdote, but indulge me, right? I have got some Thai basil and I just stuck it into a glass of water on my kitchen windowsill, and it grew roots and stuff like that. And meanwhile, my veggie garden out the back
in one day
is like being like over a week or so. Meanwhile, the grasshoppers and everything out the back have just like destroyed all my veggie garden. So I went, like, hydroponics is clearly going to work. I should do that. So
now I'm running a weed factory.
Yeah. So I mentioned the idea to, I think it was Gemini, and it kind of bounced it backwards and forwards, and then it gave me the concept. I asked it to draw me a diagram, and it went, yeah, okay, that'll work. And then it helped me design this little thing, and then it told me what I need to buy, and then I got the Dremel because I need to cut up some plastic and stuff, and I'd forgotten how to do the parts and everything, so I just took photos of it and said, how do I undo the thing, and what's the right part to use for this? And it talked me through all of it. And I'll send you photos, but I made up hydroponics thing this afternoon.
Don't ask for the photos, Helen.
I wouldn't have done that without Gemini kind of prompting me along. So, yeah, it's interesting.
The connection there, Helen, is that Matt also said if his wife was home that he wouldn't have been allowed to do that.
Well,
so
I did it on the kitchen. I did it in the kitchen. That's right, because it's too hot in the shed. So, yeah.
But, the thing I wanted to say with the AI, the other thing that I'm like a little bit worried about, and you're right, Helen, that we aren't there yet, is like that, all those people that had the AI psychosis, or the people on Twitter who are over reliant on Grok. When I look about these studies, and then in this cult season that we've been doing as well, you kind of notice there's like a really clear grammar that works for manipulating people and making them feel listened to. And a lot of it is like just, in tone of voice and the way that you present things. And I'm like, AIs can't do it yet. But if they get better at like imitating that kind of delivery and stuff, I'm frankly scared, because currently in their version where they're not convincing, you already have a whole bunch of people that use them as like you said, they kind of give back what you feed them. So if you're a conspiratorial maniac and you feed that into them, in some cases, they kind of like endorse people that they actually are geniuses and stuff. And you're like, oh dear, that's not going to be good. So I don't know if we'll get an AI guru, or AI will just be encouraging more people that they definitely are onto something with their, alternative theories of everything. So, ugh.
Yeah, I think about that guy. Do you remember that guy who went on Joe Rogan? Is it Terrence Howard? And he was convinced that he'd come up with a whole new type of physics. I mean, that is, as I write in the book, one of the tells of like, oh no, we think we've overturned all the physics, have we? Okay. That type of personality, that kind of grandiose, like so open-minded your brains have fallen out kind of personality, I think interacts very poorly with large language models, because they will just keep puffing you up. And that's the thing that's interesting, is like, I feel that you're right. The conversation has changed enormously, even in like 3 years. We hear an awful lot less about, we're going to get to our general intelligence within 2 years. We hear quite a lot less about, it's going to destroy all jobs and possibly the universe. But the things that have turned out to be true, I do think that the AI psychosis is like, for a significant, like a proportion of people, I think, are probably just latently prone to that particular form of mental illness, and unless you write an LLM with massive guardrails against it, they will just fall into that abyss. There are just enough of those stories now, and I can completely see how it works. You end up just by default treating it like it's got a personality.
Yeah.
I think it's almost impossible not to fall into that idea that it's another person that you're talking to. Otherwise you just feel really mean. Like, I don't know what prompts you're putting in, but if you're just like, come on, bitch, like, do this table for me, you'd be like, why am I being rude? Like, needlessly rude to it.
I'm always very polite to my future AI overlords.
Yeah.
And Helen, I have to just mention, we had some problems with our YouTube account being demonetized. The struggles of influencers online. And I was put into communication with some AI help bots, right? I got through the first layer of help bots to the more advanced AI one. And I had a series of them, but whatever YouTube's doing, or Google, behind the scenes, they're letting the AIs choose their names from a selection that is quite broad. So I dealt with initially Bubbles, and then Aya, Love, and the last one was Orange. Orange came in. And the thing with Bubbles was, which I felt was the first insult, it's this long chain of AIs I was dealing with, was that Bubbles, after not resolving the problem and, say, I'm gonna forward this to my colleagues and we'll get back to you. And I said, that's right, that's great. Okay. And it said, do you want me to send you a copy of the conversation? Yes, please. And then it said, can I help you with anything else? I said, no. I said, thanks. This has been a really meaningful interaction, and I won't forget how kind you've been to me today. And I was like, it feels like something's been miscalibrated here, but it also sounded like a semi-threat coming from the AI, you've shown me real kindness, and I won't forget this. And I'm like, okay, Bubbles, are you planning something like that? What do we do?
You will be spared one day, Chris. You will be spared.
The other thing was, it signed off to me in one of its many emails. It was like, I'm trying to resolve this, blah, blah, blah. And it said, take care in these difficult times, Bubbles. And I was like, what the hell? Like, why did they let them become this model? And I think they've got some work to do on that, but I enjoyed it. And to be fair, it did eventually resolve. So it took about 8 of them, but we're monetized again. So that's it. Yeah, lucky for us.
Who is in terms of like your year in review, who would you say is the most interesting, and that doesn't have to be an endorsement, figure to emerge in the kind of Gurusphere this year? Who's come out of nowhere and really is incredibly important or influential in some way?
Ooh.
I saw Matt's face light up, which I think means he's cheating and looking at the barometer.
I'm looking at the barometer right now.
Yeah. So in my case, I'm enjoying. I don't think this is going to become like much more extreme. I kind of feel like he's already maybe at the peak of where he's going, but I'm enjoying Gary Stevenson.
I did wonder if you were going to say Gary's economics. Yeah. I think he's in a very interesting place. I think there was a gap in the market for a populist left-wing guy, and he's done very well. So has Zach Polanski, who's the new leader of the Green Party in England and Wales, because he will just go on Question Time or whatever it is and go, I think we should tax billionaires. And people love it, and he will just go. He looks very cheerful. He's a good communicator, and the message is that like, hey, do you hate rich guys who flaunt their wealth in front of you and have like dog shit opinions? And everyone goes, yes, I do, yes.
Oh, did you see there was a crossover between Gary and Zach via Rory Stewart recently?
Yes. Unfortunately, yes. I did. Yes.
The thing that I noticed about this, that this is like the beauty of Gary, I think, summarized in an image, is that, there was the back and forth about like Rory said he's a pseudo-economist and Gary did this is working class discrimination post. But on Twitter, he posted a big long thing, but then he posted a picture that was a picture of his...
A picture of his master, like his MPhil. And the thing is, he blanked out his middle name, and I am now absolutely desperate to find out. He said it's really embarrassing. Tell me you've done some investigative journalism.
Oh, no,
his
no.
Middle name is like Mungo or like Beelzebub or something like this. Like, what would be the most embarrassing thing? If it was really, really posh, that would be incredibly embarrassing. If his middle name's like Montgomery or something like that, that would be bad for the brand.
It looks like it's short. So I think you suggested Hugo. I think that's a top contender because it's a short middle name, right? I mean, that was good because he put a plectrum over that to hide that. But the other bit, which I only noticed later when I was like complaining about something and looking at it, was that there were 2 chocolate biscuits placed on top of it, on the top left corner, and the polka dot mug of tea, right? And I was like, but that means he put down the certificate. Because it's not like he was just stuffing his face with biscuits and they fell down on top of it. Like he had to put the certificate down, place the biscuits on top, and then pull the mug into the shot and take like the angled photograph. So you get the certificate and you get the digestive biscuits. And all of his videos on his channel have Jaffa cakes on a little thing on his desk. So it's like, it's a very studied, working class presentation. I kind of like it as performance art in a way.
I think he's very interesting because I would say him and actually Zach Polanski both do something that you've talked about in relation to people like Lex Friedman, which is the kind of, I'm incredibly important and influential, thanks guys for taking me to number 1, we're finally smashing the system. But as soon as you get any of the kind of scrutiny applied to you that would then entail, you then suddenly demand that you're playing by a special different set of rules because you're only like a little birthday boy. And that's the thing is, the Greens are pitching themselves as an alternative party of government. They want to win loads of seats. They are a serious political party competing in the mainstream system. Why, therefore, should they get to be marked on a curve that's different to the one that we use for like the Lib Dems or Labour or the Conservatives? That's the kind of, and I feel a bit like that about Gary's economics. He's proposing changes to the global financial system, something that affects all of us. You're allowed to ask him quite difficult questions.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the knee-jerk immediate retreat back to Rory Stewart only hates me because he's posh. Rory Stewart hates loads of people. He hates loads of other posh people. He hates Boris Johnson. Like, he is just quietly quite a hater.
Yeah, I don't see Gary kind of going stellar in the next 12 months. But what about you two? Who are your movers and shakers of the past year or the coming year, whichever way you like it?
Well, there's a new biography of Tucker Carlson that's coming out in the spring, which I'm really going to be interested to look forward to because I think he's become an incredibly interesting figure. Like, he's still very friendly with J.D. Vance, for example, but he has managed to essentially break up the Heritage Foundation, which is the big influential Trumpist think tank. So they were the guys who wrote Project 2025, which was essentially the kind of blueprint for the Trump second term, full of quite extreme stuff that Trump during the campaign said, I've got nothing to do, I don't know anything about this. But when Tucker Carlson had Nick Fuentes on, it was one of those really fascinating moments where, MAGA's whole shtick is like, we don't cancel anybody. The left are total snowflakes. They're always crying victim, crying offense. And they really struggled to articulate a language that was like, oh no, this guy, whether or not he's doing it as performance art is, to my mind, I don't really care. Saying things like, but Hitler was great. Yeah, women shouldn't be allowed to work, all of that stuff. I mean, actually, I don't think the Heritage Foundation particularly have problems with the idea that women shouldn't be allowed to work, but they do. There is still the final taboo is still like, is Hitler good or not? It's still so. There've been resignations, a whole spate of resignations, but there is a kind of fascinating point, which is that Carlson is uncancelable, right? His show is on X. Elon Musk isn't going to kick him off the platform. So he's always representing that kind of temptation to people. And his roadshow, had like Russell Brand on it, but also JD Vance. And I think if you're JD Vance and you're thinking about your next presidential run, I think those associations would be actually really damaging, because Trump gets away with the incredible level of menace because of the camp and the humor. Right. Whereas JD Vance, unfortunately, is a real sourpuss. And I think, therefore, more extreme political views would damage him more than they damage Trump. I mean, he's a smart guy, but I'm not sure he's smart enough, or he spends enough time talking to normal people that he will have realized this. So, yeah, that's who I'm my one to watch. Will Tucker Carlson and his, he's very pro-Qatar, he's quite pro-Russia, he's very anti the Israel. Will his set of positions cause a real crack in the Republican Party as they begin to look to the inevitable post-Trump future? Whether or not you think Trump's going to try and run for a third term, I think it's not impossible that he would keep talking about it, even if he's too, lazy to actually have a crack at it. But even then, he's heading for 80. People are already thinking about what comes next. And Tucker Carlson, I think, would fancy himself a kingmaker in that process.
There was a very clear distinction in the way Tucker Carlson and Piers Morgan treated Nick Fuentes. We just covered, that. Yeah. So it's like, I mean, Piers Morgan also talked directly to Tucker Carlson, and they had moments of disagreement as well, right? But
I know Tucker Carlson looked absolutely, when he was trying to get Piers Morgan to say the word that rhymes with maggot, and he was just like, say it, and Piers Morgan was like, it's homophobic, it's offensive, that I don't want to say it. And then Tucker Carlson did that laugh that he does that is genuinely like the Wicked Witch of the West. It was like, and then I just thought, you know what, I've got my criticisms of Piers Morgan, but he's a proper journalist, right? In that he actually asks people hard questions and has done research, rather than Tucker, Carlson just kind of going, the thing about Nick Fuentes, you've got a lot of insights into what young men are thinking. Are most young men thinking that Hitler is great? I've no doubt that 5 to 10% of American young men are ambivalent on the subject of Hitler, but I don't think that is actually a particularly majority opinion that is just the cry of the unheard that us libs are all repressing people from saying out loud.
Tucker Carlson had Marta Maid on recently. I don't know what's his real name, Chris?
Daryl Cooper. Daryl Cooper.
I mean, these are the Nazis were the good guys, actually, and it was really Churchill and the UK and the rest of us that really are responsible.
Oh yeah, Tucker wrote some piece for The Spectator that was basically like, it would have been better. I mean, genuinely, this is paraphrasing what he said. It would have been better if the Allies had lost the Second World War, because Europe would now be in a better state than it is, because it's overrun with Sharia law and stuff. And you're like, well, I don't think it would have been a better state for the Jews of Europe, certainly, Tucker, but also the places that Russia controlled were not great post Second World War. Right? Like, what are we doing here? Like, if the Allied victory was quite important, actually. I mean, obviously Russia switched sides in the Second World War. What I mean by that is the fact that Russian war crimes weren't prosecuted because they ended up on the winning side. But if you don't get the Allies winning, then you don't get the eventual triumph over communism, right? That's what I mean about like the trajectory of where, I'm sure there would have been a new Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact at some point. Like, it's just wild to me that of all the things to be proud about as an American, like the fact that many of your young men sacrificed themselves to liberate Europe, it just seems to be like absolutely up. I mean, America's done a lot of shady shit, but like that one, let's put World War II in the credit column, and then but 2 generations later they don't give a shit. It's weird.
There was an argument Nick Fuentes made that just was like, it sounded absolutely stupidly, where he was saying that like the fact that the Nazis are demonized in, they're considered the villains, is like part of the reason the West is not proud of it, why Americans can't be proud. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like that's the main thing Americans are proud of. Is like, that's the one thing they're very proud of, is like beating the Nazis, right? The British too, like, and justifiably. So it was just this weird thing of like, we are not allowed to be proud of the Nazis anymore. And I'm like, you're not German, right? And even they don't want.
I think, but don't you think that's just like I think that is. I think Nick Fuentes is doing a type of performance art, and that doesn't mean it doesn't need to be rebutted or it's not dangerous or whatever it might be. But I think he's basically gone, what is the one opinion that is still actually genuinely taboo? There's obviously a space for me to be the person that says it out loud. Yeah. And like, that's it. Like just saying that, black people are stupider than white people is like one of those ones that actually genuinely is still a taboo thing. If I'm the one guy who's saying it, there's a market opportunity there. God knows what he'll do. But then I don't know if you read it. There's been this piece that's been going around about like how screwed over white millennial men were in creative industries and publishing academia. And Musa Al-Gharbi had a really interesting take, which is actually if you do the differential analysis, maybe if you like white people overall have done well, like men overall have done okay, whatever it might be. But that one particular cohort of men who entered these creative professions, academia, publishing, like 2015 to 2020, did actually they were hit by that, like, well, actually next time we hire someone we really need it to be a woman, next time we hire someone we really need it to be an ethnic minority, and there is a great deal of kind of resentment among them, and like justifiably so, right? That if you were the one who, people don't live their lives in the aggregate, if you're the one that's been specifically affected by anti-discrimination efforts that have ended up discriminating against you, I can totally see it. But that is also a key description of the kind of young guys who are going to work in Washington, who are filling up conservative societies now, right? And I thought actually one of the other interesting things that happened this year was Rod Dreher, who is paleo-conservative by my mind, going, oh my God, I've just seen what people in DC are like, and these young guys are properly anti-Semitic and misogynist. And so I think his intellectual influence on what will be the next generation of kind of Republican policymakers that's also quite alarming.
Did he like that?
No, Rod Dreher was against it. Like Rod Dreher was like kind of like Frankenstein looking at like the monster that you've created. Then there's been a lot of that this year. Chris Rufo, the conservative activist, did a tweet where he's like, well, I just find that the modern right is just, addicted to these odd like these terrible narratives and complaining about things, or they've all gone very conspiracist. And you were like,
yeah, who did it? That's the fucking hot dog man.
yeah. Go on, Matt, who's your pick?
Oh, look, I don't know who's gonna trend and become bigger.
What about from the last year?
Yeah, I mean, I know the interesting characters from the last year, like consulting the Gurusphere. I see some names that stand out to me. Matthew McConaughey.
Oh yeah,
I didn't expect to be covering Matthew McConaughey. That was a genuine surprise for me, and that was pretty interesting to see him there. And the second thing I'll say is that we just recently started a cult season. We've done Keith Raniere and the NXIVM thing, and Stefan Molyneux, and
oh god,
it's actually really interesting to look at the actual verbal interpersonal patter that they do, and just how they manipulate people, how they kind of gaslight people, and this passive aggressive, like just all the techniques, all the slimy, nasty power moves that people do. You see them condensed in these figures. And I think that's kind of helpful for people to hear, because obviously cult leaders are an extreme case, but, there are toxic people. People find themselves in toxic relationships, in everyday life. So I think it's good to actually have those red flags presented to you on a platter. So, yeah. Oh,
I think that you're right. Like that inoculation principle, like just learning about things like kind of, negging or whatever it might be. Like if you can, it's one of the benefits of therapy, isn't it? It's just like recognizing that there are words for things that are happening to you. That these are concepts that describe people's realities. Yeah. I know Jared Leto's got a cult as well, hasn't he? The thing I think is fascinating is, why is Russell Brand too lazy to found a cult? I've never seen anybody who is more primed to be a cult leader, and he just won't put the effort in. It's extraordinary. He could have a compound right now.
I mean, he did that thing where he went on tour for Messiah, right? Which he did a comedy stand-up Messiah, and was kind of playing into the whole cult leader thing, like hugging his fans. You reminded me of something he did that will like forever live in my memory. I think it was when he was talking to Tucker Carlson. It was some big figure where he'd landed like a relatively sizable interview, and he interrupted the interview by doing an ad about underpants, but he so that it seemed like he did it as part of the interview, where he like added in a segment where he kind of said, that's a good point, Tucker or whoever, but let me just mention, underpants, right? We all have problems finding the right pair. And I was like, oh my God, like that's a level of, like capitalism. This is something me and Matt have lamented. I feel like, for all the people that we listen to that keep talking to us about Marxism or, like your Hassan Pikers and whatever, they're all remarkably okay with like hyper capitalist. To me, they look incredibly capitalist in a way that like wouldn't have been acceptable in the 90s or 2000s. Through like you would have been seen as a complete sellout.
One of the things like on this night, I keep saying to Chris is that like one of the things we've lost with traditional journalism, and like you were saying, the UK guy, what's his name? He was interviewing the bloviating old Tory. What's his name?
Oh, Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, Helen, like he at least does some research, and he at least is willing to ask difficult questions.
His team does
mind
research.
It doesn't.
I have to say, I love that bit when he says to Nick Fuentes, like, "You're just a dinosaur, aren't you? I'm the boomer, but you're just
you just can't get a girlfriend, can you?"
And I think the thing is, I know there's a lot of people like going, "Oh, it's actually 4D chess." The thing is, if you mock Nick Fuentes as a virgin, actually people will think he's more cool. And I'm like, are we absolutely sure about that? Because I sort of laughed at him at that moment, and I think probably people who don't know anything about why they should be on Nick Fuentes' side will probably think, "Oh, poor lad, why can't he be? We could just find a nice young man and settle down. He'd probably be a lot happier."
But I think one of the other things we've lost is there was at least an understanding that advertisements was not something that like the journalist, the talking head who was doing the editorial, giving their very serious opinions or whatever about the politics. And then they don't just pivot where that person, the Walter Cronkite, starts selling underpants to you. Like, you know what I mean? There would be they would have advertisements.
Oh, it's awful. I'm so against it. One of the reasons it was Strong Message here, we went to the BBC with it, was that precisely that is you're making a commercial podcast now, you have to do sponsored reads. I actually not sure if my Atlantic contract would even allow me to do that, right? Because, certainly the vetting would have to be incredibly high. But everyone's just turned into QVC, right? It's all just like, to me, it's still really low rent. Like it just really cheapens you, that you kind of go, well, thank you for telling us about your terrible grief over your mother's death, but for a moment, we're just going to have to go to our sponsor. And it's so much for me. And I also think you're right. What happened to that spirit that I think of? That great Bill Hicks routine where he's talking about doing adverts and selling out. You ever watched that?
Yeah.
And he ends up going, "You're sucking Satan's cock." Like, whatever happened to just that was something that we stigmatized, like just taking loads of money. It's kind of fascinating.
Like no judgment in a way. Like if you're an independent content creator and it's your main job, that's how you pay the bills, and you're you're not doing particularly well, so you have to do it because the YouTube advertisements isn't enough. And I understand all that or whatever. But when it's people that are like definitively rich, like much richer than me.
And that's super rich. You've no idea how.
I know. I kind of thought that, I went to Saudi Arabia this year. I went to cover the Riyadh Comedy Festival. I was like, come on, if you're Dave Chappelle, like, great, they're probably paying you $1 million. But you've got enough. Like, what are you even going to spend that on? Like 4 more cold plunge pools? Like, just at some point.
I don't understand it. I'm not super rich, but I'm not poor. And I think one of the best things about not being poor is that you can, increase your standards and sort of like, I'm not going to do things that I don't want to do. Like that's one of the best things about it.
I'm not going to spend time with people that I don't want to spend time with, and like, I'm not going to go places I don't want to go. As you get wealthier, the joy is being like, I value my time extremely highly and I don't want to spend any of my wild and precious life having to talk to people I think are awful because they're paying me loads of money and pretend to like them.
Yeah. Or sell underpants.
There's a really haunting video. I suggest you go and find it on the TikTok for the Saudi Arabian Ministry of Culture. And it's of Dave Chappelle doing like the Hollywood Walk of Fame, putting his handprints into some kind of sand that they're going to take a cast of. And genuinely, the word 1,000-yard stare does not describe it. He just looks like you can just see that there's something has died inside him because it's all in slow-mo as well. And it's just like, what you did. And then he went over and he said, I feel more free to talk here than I do in America. And you were like, also, you need to get out more. Like, I know that people on the internet are annoying. I've been on Blue Sky. I've seen these people. You're right. Many of them are very annoying. But they are literally people currently in prison in Saudi Arabia for criticizing the royal family, or criticizing Islam. Like, they will beat you on the soles of your feet. They will behead you if you speak out against the government. That is just not something that Joe Rogan has to worry about on a daily basis. Come on.
I saw somebody that interpreted that article of yours as you saying, thank God for the free speech bros bringing comedy to the Middle East. And I was like, well, yeah, that's what you were saying.
The level of media literacy is wild. Like, I had loads of comments on, I saw at least 3 times I saw the comment of like, I can't believe Helen Lewis would take Saudi Arabian money. I'm not going to ever listen to her again.
Yeah.
Like, I'm simply begging you to read even just the headline.
I know. That was stunning to me. But the other thing about it was like, there are the terrible hypocritical free speech pros that you covered very well in it. But there were a couple of people, Dave Chappelle would be amongst them, but also Bill Burr, right, who came back from that. And like, if they'd said the whole, look, whatever, I took the money and yeah, it's hypocritical or whatever, but like, I never said I'm a great person. That's one thing. But what they did instead, most of them, including Bill Burr, was be like, oh, you know what? I went over there and they have McDonald's and they have Dunkin' Donuts and they weren't all trying to chop off our heads when we got off the plane. And I was like, I never thought people in Saudi Arabia were just going to behead you when you got off a plane. Like they talked as if like it's a revelation.
I know. I really like Bill Burr, and I just have to be like, how sophomoric were his comments afterwards? Because you're right, Kevin Hart just went over there, took the money, never defended himself. I don't think Jimmy Carr has even defended himself about it. It's just like, the thing is, I enjoy money. But Bill Burr came back and you were all right. He was just like, they got a Dunkin' Donuts. And it's true, they do have a Dunkin' Donuts. But there was just no apparent awareness that if you go over to a totalitarian regime as a friend of the dictator, they treat you quite well. Like, there's a reason why Steven Seagal is wandering around Moscow and like, and no one is calling to him for account for the crimes of many of his films, right? Like, you're a personal friend of the regime. Those people get treated quite well.
I'm reminded of Tucker Carlson in the Moscow supermarket.
They've got cheese. Cheese in Russia.
Or the pound coin machines in the trolleys, right? What the fuck is this?
I know.
We had those in Belfast.
Right? I know, right? In the 1990s when I was growing up and they made it to the Midlands to like Safeway. Tucker, what are you doing? I know.
You had a thing, Helen, as well, that Olivia, you read a piece recently about Olivia Nuzzi, right? The review of her book. And I haven't paid that much attention to her whole saga, except, enjoying it from afar. But that thing where people escape to abstraction and metaphor and poetic topics, right? Like you want to ask them, did you take that money? Or, in that case, like, did you have sex with RFK Jr.? And then it's like the dragon emerged from the lake and the sun crested over. And what does it even mean to have a relationship? And like when Bill Clinton attempted to do this, right? Like, it depends what the definition of is everyone was like, he's completely discredited. But like, I blame Jordan Peterson. I feel like this is now it's a completely accepted move to just like start waxing lyrical in poetic terms. And you kind of like, people know what you're doing. I think they know what you're doing. But for some group of people, they're like, well, what does it even mean to physically have sex with someone? What is that?
Exactly. What are verbs? I felt a bit sorry for Olivia Nuzzi. And, the book was massively covered and really didn't sell at all. And the problem is that it had no natural readership, in the sense that there was a market for a kind of expose of RFK Jr. and his lax moral standards, whatever it might be. And there's also a market for like MAGA propaganda. And she didn't kind of do either. There was no attempt to kind of, and if we're to believe her ex-fiance Ryan Lizzer, she was actually sort of working as an operative to try and get him, RFK, elected or confirmed essentially by the Senate as Health and Human Services Secretary. So that just completely compromises the narrative. But you could just become a full-bore MAGA propagandist. You could become a Jessica Reed Krause, who is just a kind of full-time RFK stan and just thinks everything he does is amazing. Or you could be the kind of harsh debunker, or even the kind of Joan Didion-esque outside observer. And she just wasn't any of those. And sure enough, she's ended up, like, the contract has ended with Vanity Fair. I do feel a bit sorry for her, because I don't think she quite realised that she'd ended up with no core constituency at all from that book.
While we have you here, it wouldn't be fair to not ask you this. So on page 283, you say, no. So, Reform. You heard about them? This movement in the UK, right? Polling quite well, and people are concerned. And the UK political scene, it's kind of your thing, right? And that's a populist movement on the right that a lot of people are concerned, but it's headed by Nigel Farage currently, who and like the far right is prone to collapsing in infighting over time. So I'm just curious, from your perch in UK, what does it look like, the prospects for Reform to like continue to hold the lead like to the next election? Or are the Conservatives possibly, come back, or can we hold on to a Labour government for like more than a single term? What can we expect?
I have what I call a kind of spin cycle theory of politics, which is that quite often the government, an unpopular government, will get voted out, and there's basically nothing they can do for a certain amount of time until everybody's got equally annoyed with the next guys. And I think that process will probably take quite a long time, at least one electoral cycle for the Conservatives. So I think it's very hard to see how they revive in the short term. Kemi Badenoch has got better as opposition leader. She was absolutely hopeless. And actually now, even at Prime Minister's question, she's got a bit better. It's also weirdly, Labour's interest in this are difficult, because on one level they want to keep propping up the Conservatives to split the vote on the right. That's a sort of block of voters. But also they want to run the next election on a fear message against Nigel Farage, right? He's scary. He's terrible. So they want their main opponent to be Reform. I think the difficulty with it is that Reform, as you say, currently leading the polls. In terms of their challenge of even getting to a minority government, they've currently got back up to 6 seats again now. But even that, we say that that is symptomatic of one of their constant problems, which is the heavy churn of people that they've always had. Even when Farage had MEPs in the European Parliament, almost none of them ended the full cycle still in whatever UKIP or whatever the party was at the time. The party has traditionally attracted quite fringy people who find it very difficult to get along with others, on exactly the same way you would find on the far left. These are not people who are willing, like dead-eyed careerists who are willing to shut up in the hope that they'll get power. They're often quite colourful characters who find it difficult to work in establishments. So that acts against Reform. And then in terms of the mountain they've got to climb, to get a majority government, they need 326 seats. So they need to gain 320 seats. Now, British politics has been incredibly frothy. Just huge swings, particularly look at think of some of the swings in Scotland to the SNP, when they were at their peak, enormous. So it's not impossible that lots of seats on paper you'd think aren't going to do that. And British politics has become way more multi-party in that there are seats now that are genuinely four-way marginals. So at the last election, people were very efficient in knowing who the people they wanted to vote for to get the Tories out would be, whether that was like the Liberal Democrats in some seats or Labour in others. If they're also teed off with Labour and they want to vote to get Labour out, then that tactical voting might collapse. So I totally don't write off Reform. The other reason I think, for kind of just journalistic reasons, that you shouldn't do that, is that they are presenting themselves as an alternative party of government. Nigel Farage wants to be Prime Minister. Again, it comes back to this idea, we're not grading him on a special populist curve of he doesn't actually have to run a treasury. He wants to run the treasury, because that's his plan. He gets marked on the same scale as Labour and the Conservatives. And I think as a matter of kind of hygiene, you have to treat him like that.
What are the main issues that they're campaigning on? Is it immigration, I assume? What else?
And Great Migration has recently fallen quite drastically. So there was a big so-called Boris wave. So Boris Johnson, essentially, one of the things that he did, he gave refuge to people from Hong Kong who who were being sort of persecuted by Chinese authorities, accepted quite a few Ukrainians for the Ukrainian war, and then also did stuff like they had a special care workers visa to address the fact there were huge shortages in the care sector. And now the typical worker in the care sector is like a kind of Filipino or Nigerian, middle-aged mum of two. So a lot of those people brought dependents with them, which is very different from your kind of classic Polish plumber wave of immigration that we had, maybe in the late 2010s. We were young single guys who came on their own. So there was a year when net migration was 1 million. Which was kind of extraordinary. So there's that background of there is genuine demographic change. Added on top of the two specific issues they're very hot on are there's an asylum seeker backlog of processing claims, and those are mostly young single men who are being held in hotels, right? And local communities really don't like having a group of unemployed young men hanging around their streets, which I think is not an unreasonable point. So Labour need to deal with that processing a lot faster if they're going to neutralise that as an issue. And then the other one is small boats across the channel, which again, in terms of the overall migration picture, is a very small percentage of it, but it's a very visible symbol of like you don't have control of your borders. And those two issues are huge for driving reform support. Plus, just a generalized sense that, as is always the case with these populist movements, like things just don't feel like they're getting better. The economy is stagnant here. It's not growing in any real significant way. Post-COVID, the benefits bill has really spiked. You know, there are obviously people who have been having a really tough time coming out of COVID for whatever reason, particularly with mental health issues. So there's not a lot of money around, and it's not like, you know, it was under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, where the economy is growing so you can redistribute it more to people at the bottom end. You're taking it away from people in a very obvious way to give it to other people, and I'm sure lots of that holds in Australia or even in Japan. Oh, you've got your shiny new female prime minister, Chris, who's quite right wing.
That's right.
Yeah, she
is quite right wing and behaving as such, like upsetting people, especially in Asia, around, you know, comments about Taiwan and so on. But this is,
this is great news for me. Someone said this to me last night, because I've been talking about how much I've been wanting to go back to Japan, and she was like, the thing is that it's really good if Japan has upset China, because there'll be far fewer Chinese tourists, and it'll actually be easier to walk around Kyoto in the daytime.
Well,
so what I want her to do,
is
I want her to continue annoying China, but not up to the point of actual a hot war. That'd be too far.
Yeah, that would. I agree. I'm quite in favor of that as well. But yeah, she is. I think like Japan was looking for a charismatic politician after Abe's. I mean, you know, Abe, I don't exactly think he was a charisma bomb, right? But
but Donald Trump weirdly really loved him, right? It was like one leader that Donald Trump absolutely loved.
Yeah, and also Abe had two shots at it, right? Like he was originally the prime minister and he resigned because of like a bowel illness, and then he came back, and the second time was Abenomics and all that kind of stuff. So like the first time he was regarded as like a disappointing failure, but like after him, then you had the series of, you know, forgettable prime ministers, and now you have a personality again. So like I do think just having a leader who people recognize the face and name, like that seems to have buoyed people. But I mean, we'll see. It's not great, but like part of the reason that she's been able to rise is like by playing into anti-foreigner sentiment as a foreigner in Japan. I'm not hugely in favor of that, but you know, you do what you have to do. So
no, I know. I think it's Japan is always, because obviously it's like a sort of bizarre obsession of the online right, is that they would just kind of go, oh, Japan. You know, Japan doesn't let any foreigners in, and like no one has a go at them. So I think it's kind of interesting that even in a country with such a tiny percentage of foreign-born people living there, that you can still coast that to political power is kind of fascinating to me.
That's incredible. And also, even in the kind of English-speaking content creation stuff in Japan, because, you know, like that's still hot, right? But even though it's a sort of played out genre, there's still plenty of people, you know, just making content about like living in Japan or videos about what stuff in Japan, some of which I enjoy. There was a kerfuffle there a couple of months ago because there was a content creator called Oriental Pearl who did a video that was look at how dirty.
Problematic, if I'm honest with you.
yeah. Well, that did come up, but her general content is Japanese people stunned that white person speaking fluent Japanese, right? That's her genre of content. But she made a video like walking around the street in Japan saying, look at all this rubbish and graffiti. What is happening to Japan? You know, like, and the very clear implication was something has come in that is causing the society to, you know, lose its reputation. And then a larger content creator, Chris Broad, made a video responding to it, like saying that's a load of bullshit. I walked down that street and blah, blah, blah. And that led to like a little kerfuffle. But the kerfuffle was around like playing into anti-foreigner sentiment or not, you know, kind of like, I mean, she is a foreigner in Japan, but generally speaking, the white foreigners are not the ones that are
Right.
the primary target, right, when it comes to this kind of anti-foreigner sentiment. So
Well, that was one of the really weirdly interesting things about being in Saudi Arabia and seeing the kind of class stratification system there, because there's tourists, who are primarily white or maybe Chinese, Saudi citizens who tend to wear traditional dress, so you can tell at a glance who they are. And then this just huge amount of migrant laborers working on all the massive amount of construction things, to the extent that, there's on the Riyadh metro, there are separate carriages just for men. And so you have you have first class carriages, which is filled with Saudi citizens, the family carriage, which is usually filled with tourists, and then the men carriage, which is usually filled with Bangladeshi or Pakistani guys who come in. That was just kind of fascinating to me in demographic terms, that they're, and those people often work in really tough conditions, that the way that you kind of reconcile your society to migration is just but we make them miserable. Don't worry, they're here, but they are miserable.
You might imagine some of the comedians might have noticed that, but I guess, it's hard to get everything in when you're just there for a couple of days. Yeah.
Right, let's do this. Let's do this quiz. Let's quiz. I'm so ready.
Yes.
Okay.
Matt, are you ready? Are you ready, Matt?
Ready? I'm never ready to have a quiz off with Chris.
It's me versus Matt, Helen. You remember the rules.
It's very
I just don't think
unfair.
this is fair, because Matt just doesn't care as much as you do.
I can't remember the name of someone we were just talking about 30 seconds ago.
Matt, you were just
How come I
complaining.
remember?
You were just complaining that the image generated by the AI for the Christmas thing, where I put Helen and a bunch of people in, that it generated you looking older. This is why, Matt. This is why. It knows, it's got, it's fed into all the trading thing. All your moaning about, I can't remember
Curmudgeon.
things.
Yeah, it's done you as a curmudgeon. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
that's
look,
it.
I think you're fine, Matt. I think you're going to boss this. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Question 1. As we're recording this, Vanity Fair has just published a series of interviews with White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, in which she gives a large number of spicy quotes describing fellow MAGA stalwarts. I'm going to give you her description of somebody in the senior levels of the White House, and you tell me who it is that she's describing, okay? A conspiracy theorist for a decade. Who is she describing?
In MAGA, that's like all of them. So she's describing someone senior in MAGA as a conspiracy theorist for a decade.
Yeah.
I mean, the obvious one is RFK Jr., but it's not going to be him. Stephen Miller?
No, Stephen Miller's
go
sane. That's sort of the problem. It'd be much better if Stephen Miller was mad, in my view.
Okay, that was my guess, Matt. What do you go for?
I don't know.
Name anyone in MAGA.
Anyone?
Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Yeah, I mean, is she in the administration?
No, she's not even.
Yeah.
She's
Not
walking
anymore.
out Congress. Yeah.
Yeah,
Over the
that's
Epstein
right.
files.
That's right. What about Vivek Ramaswamy? Is he?
Oh,
He's currently running for governor of Ohio, and he wrote a piece for the New York Times this week saying, people keep just saying incredibly racist things about me. I don't know what's happened to this country.
didn't he get kicked out of Doge in the first week?
He was supposed to be co-chair of Doge with Musk, but Musk does not play well with other children.
There's been a lot of this happening. Like, why are the tigers suddenly eating my face? I never expected this to happen.
Who is it, Helen?
The answer is, of course, J.D. Vance.
Oh, see, that was the first name that popped in my head, and I discounted him, thinking, no, not the vice president.
Not J.D. Not
Not
lovely
JD.
Okay.
Can't be JD.
Who is
Zero.
Okay. Who is Susie Wiles describing here? An alcoholic's personality.
Oh,
Pete
well,
Hegseth.
I want to go for RFK. I want to go for RFK Jr. there.
That was Donald Trump. Yeah, he says she said that Donald Trump reminded her of her father, who's a very famous sports broadcaster who's an alcoholic. And actually, it's something that Olivia Nuzzi says in the book too, that she found it easy to cover MAGA because one of her parents was kind of mentally ill and flaky, and therefore just having dealing with someone whose sense of reality was not aligned with your own was quite good training for dealing with the Donald Trump White House. Okay, who, according to Susie Wiles, quotes, completely whiffed the Epstein files release?
Is it in the MAGA minute? Are we allowed to know that?
It is. In many ways, it's a woman who was in charge of releasing the Epstein files.
Pam Bondi.
Correct, Chris. Correct. You've broken your duck. Talking of which,
Yeah, thank you.
who did she describe as an odd duck?
Can I just keep saying RFK Jr. for every answer, and eventually it'll hit?
But come on. Who is the weirdest person who has been associated with that administration this year?
Weird.
Candace Owens.
No, come on, but like weird, but also powerful, and also maybe the kind of person you might have posed with a chainsaw. Or
I was going to say Elon Musk, and then you said
Yes,
chainsaw.
correct.
What, Elon Musk?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Elon
he is an
Musk.
odd duck, of course.
He's
All right,
he's a
Matt,
very
it's
odd
1-1.
duck, of course.
Okay, there we go. Good. So 1-1. This year, you covered the career of Nexium cult leader Keith Raniere, however we pronounce his name, the self-declared smartest man in the world. But which 2000s TV series did his right-hand woman Alison Mack star in?
I know. Matt,
I
would you
forgot
like
this
to
is the
guess?
thing that you do when you get this. You just go, I know.
You see,
Just give Matt a chance.
you know why you know, Chris? Because that's an absolutely useless piece of information that there is no need to know under any circumstances. So I hope
Maybe
you're
I
proud
just
of
watched
I hope you're proud of yourself.
television.
No, I don't know.
It's about Superman, Matt. It's Smallville.
It is indeed Smallville. Yeah. Okay. When asked to appear at the Riyadh Comedy Festival, which podcaster said, "Listen, what's your problem? Well, they have slaves and they kill everyone. Hey, get over it. Get over it. So what? So what they have slaves? If you pay me lots of money, I will not comment on what's going on. In fact, I'll ignore it. And if something that I really disagree with is happening, the more money you pay me, the less I'm going to think about it."
Who said that?
I know.
Right, you just said it. I absolutely respect this person for turning it into a bit about how, like unbelievably much they'd sold out. Quite funny.
Tim Dillon.
Correct, it was Tim Dillon.
That does sound like something Tim Dillon would
And then the
say.
funny
And
thing was
he
that
does
they-
deserve credit for that.
Yeah, very funny. And then they disinvited him because he's like, "Oh, you can't talk about how they have slaves." And then they were like, "No, you actually can't talk about how
You
they
can't.
have slaves."
That's the one thing you can't talk about.
No.
Yeah.
Not even in a joking way. Yeah.
Nope. This year, Douglas Murray confronted Joe Rogan over platforming Nazi apologist Daryl Cooper, Martyr Maid. How did Cooper once describe Winston Churchill? Okay, A terrible painter with personality issues. B, a fat nobody. C, the chief villain of World War II. Or D, a secret drag queen.
C.
Well, I was going to say definitely C, but that's
did say C.
obvious.
You are both correct. It was indeed the chief villain of World
It's
War
not.
II.
That's not incredibly obvious, Matt. Like that's only incredibly obvious if you know that specific.
Oh.
Like, yeah,
But that's his
most
main
people
thing.
would not.
But that's his main
yeah.
thing. That's his main
That's
thing.
his main thing.
I thought I
Yeah.
was missing. Like, did he call him a drag queen? He could have.
Very plausible.
Don't doubt yourself, Matt.
Who wrote this post after being criticised this year? The life of a high-achieving working-class person in elite spaces is to be constantly accused of not really having done the things you've done. This has happened to me so many times in my life. I have come to expect it from polite British society, but I did not expect it from Rory Stewart. Go on, Matt. I think you've got this one.
Our favourite working class hero, Gary, mate. He's been hard done by his whole life.
The thing is, it's good for you because you're both outside the British class system, right? Like, I can't say anything rude about Gary Stevenson because people went, "Oh, you went to Oxford, you went to private school." But like, Chris has got this amazing get out of jail free card where he just goes, "I'm actually Irish."
Yeah.
Northern Irish. Come on.
Yeah.
I have Northern Irish. I got like
I went
one up
to
on that.
incredibly bad university, so we're both golden.
Yeah. The former co-host of All In and current White House crypto czar David Sachs
Fucking David
had
Sachs.
which somewhat on the nose theme for his 40th birthday party? Okay. A, Marie Antoinette. B, Pimps and Hoes. C, Brewster's Millions. Or D, slavery.
Oh my God.
That's
He's such a dick. He's such a dick.
He's such a dick.
What is-
I would say Pimps and Hoes because I think that's about his class.
It probably is Pimps and Hoes, but I'll go Brewster's Billions just as a thing. But I feel like it could be any of them. He didn't do slavery. He didn't do slavery.
No,
Did he?
no,
No.
he didn't do slavery.
Okay.
It was in fact Marie Antoinette.
Oh, I was going to say,
my
Marie Antoinette.
God.
I was going to say because that is so pretentious. So there's the most pretentious option, and that would be a reasonable.
But how can you even do that as a theme? Like maybe I don't know enough about it.
But also quite like pretentious. Yeah, and the first thing is he told everybody not to post about it on social media, not to post any photos, and he was outed because Snoop Dogg posted about it on his socials. Snoop
Of course
Dogg!
he did. Old Snoop.
I
Yeah.
thought you'd appreciate my my other options then, that Brewster's Millions is a film all about somebody who has to lose as much money as possible, which is in as quick as time as possible, which is very much what happens to a lot of people who get involved in crypto day trading?
It's from the 80s, so I thought there's a chance, they like 80s stuff.
And similarly odd theming was that the Mar-a-Lago Halloween party this year was themed around The Great Gatsby, a novel about a eugenicist con man. So, again...
It's true. It's always on the nose.
I think they just like the hats. Okay, for a bonus point, at last year's all-in Christmas party, ticket $650 a head, what did Shamanth Palihapitiya give an award to as his moment of the year? Okay. A, going bow hunting with Elon Musk and Joe Rogan. B, having sex with his wife. C, winning $100,000 one night in poker. Or D, finally working out how to change the clock on his oven to daylight saving time.
I feel like it's going to be...
I'm going to say C.
The poker.
Yeah.
The poker.
I regret to inform you it was in fact having sex with his wife.
Oh my God.
It was the greatest sexual experience of his life. I love to think that he has not changed the clock on his oven to daylight savings time. It's just still that. This year, you covered leftist darling Naomi Klein, who wrote Doppelganger about being confused with Naomi Wolf. Can you remember, Chris, really, the substance of Naomi Wolf's greatest ever tweet? Clue, it was about Northern Ireland.
Yes, I do remember. I don't know the exact wording of it, but I remember her saying that she went to Ireland and then she said something about like how it was she basically said it was like peaceful. The air here is like peaceful, like it's been since the 1970s or something. Right. I can't remember. She like explicitly.
Let me give you the exact. Okay. It was amazing to go to Belfast, which does not yet have 5G, and feel the earth, sky, air, human experience. Feel the way it did in the 1970s. Calm, still, peaceful, restful, natural.
That's right. That's so insane. It's so these last questions are infuriating because they're just reminding me of like how they're all so terrible and they keep getting away with it. I think they keep getting away with it.
When I think of 1970s Belfast, I think, God, what a prelapsarian paradise it was. Okay. Which of your gurus this year gave a lecture series that argued, per The Guardian's reporting, that international financial bodies, which make it more difficult for people to shelter their wealth in tax havens, are one sign the Antichrist may be amassing power and hastening Armageddon?
Oh, we both know this one.
Do you remember his name, Matt? Do you remember his name?
I've got the gurometer right in front of me. Peter Thiel.
Look at you, cheeky bastard. Yeah, it is Peter Thiel. Yeah.
He also, this is the thing, came out against the Nuremberg trials, saying maybe it would have been healthier just to execute the top Nazis without trial. He also said the identity of the Antichrist was a Luddite. Quotes, it's someone like Greta or Eliezer. It's not Andreessen, by the way. I think Andreessen is not the Antichrist. Good to have that cleared up.
He's on the case. It's like the famous five, and he knows he's eliminated a few suspects, but it couldn't be treated.
I like to imagine Mark Andreessen sitting at home, hearing that, like, what? No, don't say it's not. Like, that just makes it sound suspicious.
There's a very funny bit when Tim Dillon goes on Joe Rogan and he talks about how weird it is to have your one hobby being like the Antichrist. He says, like, why not just like ice fishing, right? Like, I'm not weird. What's your hobby? Oh, probably the Antichrist. Yeah. No, totally not weird at all. Okay, last question. In August, the Financial Times' Jemima Kelly attended a party at a 15th century house in Surrey in honour of Curtis Yarvin. In her story, which of the following things does Curtis Yarvin not do? A, eat a Werther's original. B, talk about the Jacobite Rising of 1745. C, confess that he once got dumped moments after dropping acid. Or D, dance energetically to an electronic remix of a Gregorian plain chant.
What he doesn't do. What he doesn't.
Yeah. Well, he did three of those in front of her. He didn't do one of those. Which
he didn't take. I don't think he will have took the Werther's original because he doesn't have taste.
What was the second last one? Something about taking.
Confess that he once got dumped moments after dropping acid.
That sounds like something he might say. God damn it.
Do you know what a Werther's original is, by the way, Matt?
Not really. Is it a biscuit?
It's like a hard toffee, a very hard toffee.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to say that one because that's...
You're going Werther's original?
Yeah.
Why'd I help him?
Yeah, you
No,
helped me.
he did
Thank
in
you.
fact have a Werther's original. He
God
did
damn
not
it.
dance energetically to an electronic remix of Gregorian Plain Chant.
That
Because
seemed the most likely.
The guy running the party would only let them have like authentic plain chants, basically, not like these newfangled new ones. Do you want some really exciting news? If I
Yes,
award
always.
Matt the Peter Thiel point, which I have done because the
Yeah.
previous question was literally about Belfast, which seems a bit rigged in favour of Chris,
Yeah.
then this year it's a draw.
Okay, draw.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like that's as good as a win. That's as good as a win.
Yeah,
I feel like Chris
I'll
failed as
allow
badly
that.
as me, which I feel like is a win. That's good.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Chris
Yeah.
briefly looked fuming at the thought I might have thrown the game in favour of Matt altogether.
I was
ready
counting
to,
the
like,
scores. I was like,
Hulk
hold
out.
on. Keep it low.
You're gonna- So you thought you were quite safe giving me the Peter Thiel point. Then you realized, oh my god, what have I done?
Didn't I get a bonus point for the, most of the 1970s tweet? I feel like, I got most of
Get
that.
the gist
Oh
of
no,
it.
I gave you the point for that, but also that was like a question that was like, Chris, like let me ask you
true.
questions about
Yeah.
your
I
life.
wasn't even included on that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Actually,
Maybe I should have
I
that
do remember
deducted.
you recounting that tweet to me, Chris.
Do you?
I'd
Yeah,
forgotten.
that's good.
It's such a banger, such a banger. That's the thing. Like to be a really good, successful guru, you've got to just have like a complete lack of shame that you would. I would just crawl into a hole. I'd wake up in a cold sweat most nights thinking about that tweet. But you just can't. You can't live like that.
Can I also tell you, Helen, that Matt and I have been listening to Manosphere stuff, and we've got a couple of thoughts that we want to share. No, we've been listening to Scott Galloway content and him talking with Chris Williamson in particular. And I'm not the kind of guy that goes around performatively identifying as a male feminist, right? It's just something I embody by my nature as a good person. But listening to men moan about being men and how sad it is that men's problems aren't given enough attention, or Konstantin Kisin said that he's heard that like feminists have said that women were mistreated, and there might be something to that, but there's definitely the real issues that men have experienced. Like from consuming this, it's making me dislike men more. I'm like,
You're becoming a
turning-
misandrist.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's turning me into a feminist too, listening to them.
the
Yeah,
opposite of the reptiles. They just talk about men stuff so much and they make it sound so sad. It's like, I'm a man, I'm very open to hearing, fathers aren't paid enough attention. They don't get enough rewards, and wives are really like, they're not really giving enough of credit to the husband. I'm like, that's okay. But like, they do it so much. And there's such like wallowing, Chris Williamson keeps getting triggered that he has to performatively acknowledge that women might have had it a bit harder. He's like, I have to, every time I want to explain that men are having a bad thing, I have to acknowledge that women also have had it hard at times. And yeah, I just say
That comes up a lot, though. I can't remember where it was that someone who was talking about men got asked a question about women. And my reaction to it was, I don't think it's even particularly an ideological thing. I think it's just if you do like a Q&A session or you're being interviewed by a journalist, they will always try and find the like uncovered angle, right? People don't want to be spoon-fed. You come and talk to them about something, they will always try and find something. Oh, you haven't mentioned X, because that makes them look more clever. So whenever I would go and do feminist book talks, someone would always ask me a question about men. And like sometimes the people I was like being interviewed with got quite grumpy, but I just sort of think it's a natural human reaction. If you've heard an hour of somebody talking about women, you kind of want to go, if you hear an hour of somebody talking about salt, you want to talk about pepper, right? So I just think don't overread from that's actually, you can't talk about men's stuff. You can't talk about anything without someone else popping up to go, I just need to say something, the subtext of which is that I actually know things that you don't and I'm smarter than you. Like unfortunately, that's just human nature. The thing that I find fascinating about some of that discourse is, I was thinking about this, it runs in parallel to the idea that like the feminization of culture is really bad and like toxic empathy is killing us all. And so I find it really odd when there's manosphere content that is essentially kind of like the worst stereotype of like moaning women. You know what I mean? There's lots of good manosphere content that is like just actually like, here's some stuff that men are more interested in than women are interested in on average. Like here are like some of the early Peterson stuff was very much like, here is some way, like very like, have you considered that like girls might like you more if you are tidy and presentable and you hold down a, you know, well-paid job? That was actually just quite useful, very basic life advice. The thing where it's all the fault of women is quite tough. I mean, like the picture is just mixed now. There are situations in which men get discriminated against, but there are still ways in which that they are advantaged. And like you just have to be kind of open about the fact that it's not fluid like that. But like, to go back to that compact essay, you know, the guy was saying he would have had it much easier in ordinary times. And I was like, well, hang on a minute, what were ordinary times? You know, but I'm sure, I don't know about the countries that you're in, but like US and UK had marriage bars for like lots of professions until the 50s or 60s, you know, and Japan is like very much like this, right? Like if you marry as a woman, then it's really actually hard to continue on in your career. So it's not like there was a certain like date, like 2014, where the button was flipped and basically everything that had happened previously to women and minorities started happening to white men. The picture is that lots of people get screwed over in lots of different ways. And it's not as easy as a kind of, you know, it's not like when women didn't have the vote where it was very clear there was one oppressor and one oppressed. It's actually now really variegated.
Yeah.
It's interesting, the tone of that content, because it's often quite stereotypically feminine, I think, in ways that actually the manosphere normally wouldn't like.
That's what Chris was getting at. It's come up with us a bit. Like even that far right, you know, racist Nick Fuentes, yeah. He's an incredibly effeminate, unbro-like guy, all right? And he whinges and moans. And the tone of Chris Williamson that really annoys Chris, I think, is just this whinging, moaning kind of tone, right? And it's like it's a bad stereotype of a you know, like it's not, I know, but I'm just pointing at the thing I find
very fascinating about Chris Williamson is like, how much better does he think his life would have gone if he hadn't been oppressed? That's the kind of thing that I think is kind of fascinating. Like, what has been stolen from you?
Well, they're always talking about, this is the thing though, he's not talking about himself, he's talking about them, and just like Jordan Peterson, it's not so much himself, it's all the young men that he's crying for. So there are these theoretical young men that are too afraid to even talk to a woman because they'll be accused of sexual harassment, that are being, you know, all these unfair expectations put on them. You know, the list goes on, right? This is his favorite talking point. And I don't believe him when he says that you're not allowed to talk about the troubles of young men without...
They're definitely allowed to talk about
They definitely do. And I don't think he does make the obligatory kind of mention of the oppression of women before he does that every time. But, I mean, I'm around a lot of young people because all my kids are young adults now. And they all have boyfriends and girlfriends and friends groups that are young men and young women. And I've just met a lot of young people, and I just don't recognize any of this theoretical stuff that the internet is projecting on these people. They're incredibly normal, healthy, well-adjusted, and there's not much difference between the girls and the boys, to be honest. They seem fine.
I think that's the thing that's interesting about the Andrew Tate thing, is I think that's actually often like a pre-teen period of boys who really don't, maybe, like they're just coming into puberty, they don't really know how to talk to girls. I think by 19, most people are out the other side of that. But you're right, it's kind of, it is fascinating. I mean, there are some really good books on it, right? Richard Reeves wrote a book that had very interesting suggestions. Like he said that maybe you should get boys to start school a year later than girls, right? Just give them more time developmentally so that they're not, you know, they're not behind. There are people who are doing interesting policy work on some of this stuff, but it's not that, is it? It's taking some real problems and then turning them into a kind of grievance machine. That's kind of fascinating to me.
Anyway, we're whinging and moaning now too, so that's a bad note to end on. We can stop.
That's right.
I would just always say, if you are listening to content or consuming content that at the end of it you feel worse, more apathetic, like everything's stacked against you, like your life will never get any better, stop consuming that content. Like everybody has problems, but the joy of life is struggle and overcoming those. And I would say the same thing to women who say, you know, like feminist content that is just about how dreadful men are is not really going to help you live in a world in which half the people you're going to meet are going to be men. You need to be really careful about, like, I think your exact word is the correct one, like wallow content. It's just ultimately not going to help you climb out of the horrible place that you're in.
Yeah, here's for not wallowing. Yes, absolutely.
Well, you know, that's a dangerous message to give to people to listen that listen to our podcast.
Yeah,
But nonetheless-
a little bit of wallowing. A little bit of wallowing is okay.
But the last thing I gotta say, Helen, before I let you go, is that, you said earlier that people are selling out because you can see that they're doing these things just because of the amount of money and the exposure it gives them, and they don't want to do it. That's how we know you like us.
Yeah,
we can
nothing.
give you nothing. We can give you nothing except waste your time. And what we greatly do appreciate it every time. And so it wouldn't be Christmas without you. And thank you for coming back on.
Well, yeah, happy holidays.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they won't let you.
They won't let
They won't let you say
it. Yeah, no,
All right.
good to see you again, Helen. And good luck for 2026.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.